Hello, and thanks for watching this quick video on how to find additional hidden vulnerabilities during DAST testing with K2 Cybersecurity. By adding K2 Cybersecurity to your DAST testing, you'll find additional significant vulnerabilities that are often missed during a typical DAST scan. You'll also get better telemetry on discovered vulnerabilities, including the exact location of the vulnerability, down to the line of code and file name where the discovered vulnerability resides. With that, let's see how this works. First, let's take a look at why we care about vulnerabilities in code. We want to find as many vulnerabilities in pre-production during DAST and vulnerability testing as possible. The reason for this is that there are more vulnerabilities being released into production in code than ever before. If you look at 2019, over 17,000 new vulnerabilities were reported to the US CERT Vulnerability Database, a record high for the third year in a row. For 2020, we're already exceeding the run rate for 2019, and we're on track for another record year. If you look at web applications themselves, it's an estimated 82% of them have a serious or critical vulnerability, and all of them have at least one vulnerability. If you look at why that is, the drive to get applications out to production faster than ever has meant the use of more third-party, legacy, and open source code being used in applications, all of which typically have higher levels of vulnerabilities. All of that means that no matter who you are, you probably have a vulnerability, and you are susceptible to an attack. We see this on a continuous basis with the high-profile breaches that make it into the news. If you're already using a DAST or penetration testing tool, you're probably already experiencing some pain points during your testing. These are some of the pain points we've heard about from our customers. First, it's often difficult to determine which of the vulnerabilities discovered by the testing tools are actually false positives. Without detailed information on the vulnerability, it often takes developers time to rule a discovered vulnerability a false positive, wasting valuable developer time on false positives generated by the testing tool. It would be great to have a way to easily determine which of the reported vulnerabilities are false positives. The second problem faced is that it's almost guaranteed you have missed vulnerabilities, vulnerabilities that are missed during your testing phase and make it to production. And finally, when you get vulnerabilities reported from your tools, there's a lack of detail on the vulnerabilities, increasing the amount of remediation time needed to correct the problem. Getting more information on the vulnerability, including its location in the code, would greatly reduce the remediation time. K2 Security Platform actually has two use cases. First, the one we've been talking about here in this quick overview video, using K2 to find hidden additional vulnerabilities during DAST testing and providing the additional detail on vulnerabilities that are discovered during your testing phase. Our other use case is to provide runtime protection for applications against zero-day attacks and attacks on unpatched vulnerabilities. We won't go into detail on this other use case. There are other videos available on YouTube that cover this. The main topic of this video is to talk about how K2 finds additional significant vulnerabilities when used with your existing DAST scanner. As a recap, K2 can find additional hidden vulnerabilities that are often missed by your DAST testing tools. K2 does this by residing directly on the application server and observing activity that's missed by a DAST scanner. K2 sees when an exploit is successful, even if the DAST tools cannot. K2 can also help pinpoint false positives when a DAST tool reports vulnerability, and K2 does not see that same exploit successfully triggering a vulnerability. For vulnerabilities that are confirmed by K2, K2 provides additional significant details on the vulnerability, including the file name within the application that has the vulnerability, the line of code within the file name that has the vulnerability, and the additional details needed to reproduce the exploit and the vulnerability. K2's technology is deterministic and validates the code is executing as intended based on the way the code was written. There's no dependence on past attack knowledge, unlike other matching technologies including machine learning, artificial intelligence, heuristics, and fuzzy logic, all of which use signature, pattern, or some type of rule set matching. And they tend to fail to match new exploits and have higher incidences of false positives. As an agent that resides directly on the application server, K2 remains low impact, adding less than a millisecond of latency to a running application, and using a minimum of resources, including disk, CPU, and memory. Next, let's take a look at how this works by looking at K2's benefit when running with Tenable.io's web application scanner. Note, this can work with any DAST scanning. It's not required that you have Tenable. We do have a partnership with Tenable in which we work with Tenable to produce an integrated report with Tenable.io WAS, which provides both Tenable's results correlated with K2's results, which include the additional detail on the found vulnerabilities, including a listing of additional discovered vulnerabilities found by K2. You can find us on Tenable's partner page. We've shown you a screenshot of our listing on Tenable's partner page here. If you look at the individual reports generated by K2 and Tenable, you can see here the report generated by Tenable.io WAS discovering an SQL injection vulnerability. K2 can provide additional information, including node, application, and container information. K2 also finds and reports on the file name with the vulnerability along with the line number in the code with the vulnerability for quicker remediation. And finally, K2 also provides the full HTTP information sent by the attack. And because we have a partnership with Tenable, we also provide an integrated report combining these two individual reports to make reading and understanding the results of the testing much easier. We do this using the Tenable API, using a tool provided by K2. In this report, you can see there were a total of 6 high-risk critical vulnerabilities found by both K2 and Tenable combined. 4 were found by both K2 and Tenable, while an additional 2 were found by K2 alone. We do provide a summary page showing this information, including the vulnerable URLs and the associated vulnerabilities for each of the URLs. We also provide detail pages on each of the discovered vulnerabilities. In this case, you can see the summary information provided by Tenable and the detailed information provided by K2, including the file name and line number in code of the discovered vulnerability. On this page, we see a detail page on a vulnerability that was found by K2, but Tenable did not detect this vulnerability, an SQL injection vulnerability. Once again, we provide the file name and line number in code to help remediate this vulnerability quickly. We can also help you identify false positives during your DAST and penetration testing. For example, during your testing, if K2 does not see the vulnerability, in this case cross-site scripting found by the testing tool, it's a good indication that this may have been a false positive. This gives you a quick indicator to verify the vulnerability and to determine if it may in fact be a false positive. That's the quick introduction to how K2 helps enhance Tenable.io's WAS testing. Please note, for more information on how our technology works, please watch our YouTube video on deterministic security. For other information related to K2, you can visit our YouTube channel, and you can visit our website at k2io.com to find out more about how we can help with your DAST and vulnerability testing, along with your runtime application security needs. Thanks for your time.